Ladies and gentlemen, this is a story about Ambon and surrounding islands, a small archipelago called Maluku, near Timor, the Philippines and Australia. In early 1500 the Portuguese arrived at the islands and had built a colony. About 100 years later, the Dutch also came to these islands for their nutmeg and cloves. These islands were also known as the original Spice Islands. In the 1600s the Dutch reduced the Portuguese and left Maluku. In 1817 the Dutch restored their authority over these islands. After 1817 the people of these islands became more loyal, and the spice monopoly was stopped. In 1830 a new army was set up, and many of the people joined the army. After the Dutch had seen they were great warriors, until 1950 they were still loyal, and it was appreciated by the Dutch government. In 1942 they fought against the Japanese alongside the Americans and Australians. Other people such as the people from Java hated them for their loyalty. In 1945 when Indonesians from Java, Sumatra, and Madura formed a republic, people of Maluku fought against them alongside the Dutch. The Dutch and Indonesians later formed a new federation of 16 states. In 1949, the Dutch transferred the sovereignty under international pressure to the United States of Indonesia. Their leader Sukarno, who was anti-Dutch, wanted to transform the federation into a unitarian state, which was against the Round Table Conference and other agreements. After his plans became known among the people of Maluku, they proclaimed independence before a unitarian Indonesian state was formed. Sukarno was mad at that time and first sent a peace mission, but it failed and Sukarno started a war against Maluku's new republic, the RMS. The people were celebrating Independence Day, and their country would soon be in war with the Indonesians. While the Declaration of Independence of Maluku was unanimous, the Indonesians did not accept the new-styled Republic of South Maluku. But since Maluku did no longer fell under Indonesian rule, they appealed to the Dutch and United Nations. They thought the Dutch would help them, but help was denied by their former colonizer. The United Nations said the Dutch were responsible for these people, but they turned their cheeks. As a result, many people of Maluku died in the war, and Indonesians kept on moving in continuously with heavy artillery. Dutch Prime Minister Dries at that time called upon the Indonesians to cease fire, but they continued and thousands of Malukans were killed, and thousands were imprisoned. The war started on Ambon in 1950 and ended on Suram in 1966. After their president Salmakil was taken in captivity, Malukans spread over Indonesian territory were sent to Holland with the Dutch. They would stay there for 6 months, but in 2014 they formed a community of 65,000 men. They would stay there for 6 months, which would be a safe period to bring all the people back home. In early 1951 the Malukans arrived in Holland and would form a government in exile in 1966 after Salmakil was executed by Indonesia. They were brought to barracks where they would stay until 1956. Over the years Malukans raised their voices. The Dutch government had promised their elders independence. When they arrived in Holland they were fired and were no longer army men. Some 12,500 Malukans came to Holland early 51. After the 50s and 60s many Malukans felt that the Netherlands had betrayed them and eventually received recognition not by the Dutch but by a country called Benin. Their struggle for recognition continues until this day. The Maluku Islands group, once known for their spices, want to be recognized because human rights abuses still occur on these islands. Indonesia denies everything, but they say that peaceful action such as raising a flag is illegal and must be punished. Human rights organizations such as Komnas HAM and Amnesty International are working on the release of political prisoners from these islands. A couple of years ago many political prisoners were imprisoned because they raised the Maluku flag in front of the Indonesian President SBY. They were tortured by an Indonesian anti-terror unit that is trained by Americans and Australian Army. Countries of the Pacific also have looked at the case of the Republic of South Maluku, which is the longest struggle of the Pacific for independence. And these Pacific countries are willing to recognize the South Maluku Republic, if necessary, in the near future. The United Nations are still silent about the case, but this can change if we fight for these people of the once famous Spice Islands.